Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Hanford, and my wife, Danae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. Before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com.
On the podcast today is Tamara Gondor. She's the founder of Launch Street, and she's going to be talking with us today about some tough decisions that she's faced as an entrepreneur and business owner. So thank you, Tamara, for being with us.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. I want to go ahead and get started with just giving us a little bit of background as to how you became an entrepreneur, business owner, and what exactly your Launch Street business does.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version because I've been in business mostly as an entrepreneur for about 25 years, but I have climbed the corporate ladder as well. But you know what's so funny about that is if you looked at my job cycle, I cycled in and out of jobs every 18 months. So I would climb the corporate ladder for 18 months. I'd have a ton of success, realize my ladder was on the wrong wall, and then I would jump off and do my own thing. And then I'd, sell it or it would bomb because, we all have the failures in our past too. And I'd go get a job again, and then I go back. Finally, in 2007, I stopped the cycle and just came to the realization that I am an entrepreneur and I have to own it. And that's what I need to do with my life. So that's why I founded, that's when I founded actually Launch Street. But this path to Launch Street was a little bit of a circuitous one. But in essence, I did brand strategy and innovation consulting for 25 years. And in that time, I helped launch products, things that you would find if you pushed your carts down the aisles of Target, Cheerios, General Mills, Procter & Gamble, Clorox, kind of all those guys, Johnsonville Sausage. And along the way, what I came to realize was that I could give people ideas, and that was fine. I got paid good money to do that. But the power wasn't in that. The power was in helping people be more innovative. And that's ultimately what my company does. So we do that through an online proprietary assessment. We do it through an on-demand platform, through keynotes and live events. We help individuals, leaders, and teams come together to unlock more innovation so they can apply it to their challenges and opportunities.
Well, can you also walk us through some tough decisions or maybe one key tough decision that you've had to make along your journey as an entrepreneur?
This is so great that we're having this conversation right now because I am in the throes of one of these tough decisions, and I'm in kind of the bottom part of that decision, which I'll kind of explain in a minute. But basically, I have this business. It's going really well. I think a lot of us entrepreneurs out there can identify with that where, you're in that comfortable place. Like, you're getting business, you're getting referrals, things are good, but that there's that greater vision out there. And that's the one I'm ultimately going for. It's the bigger vision with a bigger impact. So I had to make the tough decision to invest up in my business. And ultimately what that meant is I had to 100% bet on myself, bet on my business, and put my time, so much of my money and my energy into finding better technology partners and switching up the technology behind our systems, into hiring new staff so that they could actually do the things that I could never get to because I'm the biggest bottleneck, like a lot of founders ultimately. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so if I feel a little jumbled on it, it's because it's still so raw for me, but it was a really tough decision for me to go, you know what? I'm all in. I got to do this because I think sometimes we think we're all in, but we're just chugging along. And for me to get to that next level, I had to not just dip my toe in, I had to take a swim, go down to the bottom, come back up, go back down. Like, it's been a crazy ride.
So Tamara, how did you know it was time to do this? Because you talked about the money that it took, that you're investing, and it's going to be a little while at least, so that's returned, and in the extra time and the hiring of new staff. So what got you to the point where you said, okay, I know it's time to do this now?
Well, in all honesty, I say the first thing is I felt like throwing up when I started thinking about it, which is usually a sign that I should do something, and get a little bit uncomfortable.
You got to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, you really do. And I was super uncomfortable, but here's kind of the defining moment for me. I was looking at tax returns from years past, and we had some really good growth, but we hadn't hit that hockey stick curve that I kept wanting and looking for and talking about. So I would talk on and on and on about it, and acceleration and big impact and the 1 to a million and all this stuff. But when I looked at the numbers, I wasn't actually making it happen. So in that moment, when looking at 3 years of returns, I realized, all right, I have a choice here. I can either have another year of a return like this, which is good. It's not bad. It's successful, but it's not growing in the way I wanted it to. Or I can change the way I'm doing stuff. And that was the moment that I got nauseous and realized, all right, it's time to do it. But, there's nothing like data, but it was having that in my face and going, hey, Tamara, listen up. If you want to make a change, if you actually want this business to do what you think it can do, you've got to change what you're doing because the numbers don't lie.
Well, talk to us about the mindset that you're in right now of making sure that you're sticking through your original decision to put more money into the business and invest in the business and be investing up in your business, and how your mindset is now about, because sometimes when we get to this position, because I know where you're at, because I've been there, you get to the point where you're like, when am I going to stop spending all this money and actually start bringing that hockey stick back?
That's me. I'm in the corner. Stop spending all the money.
Well, so there's this thing called the J curve, and I'm at the bottom of the J curve. I'm at that moment where exactly what you just said, where I'm still in panic. I'm writing these big checks. I'm not yet seeing the returns of it. But here's how the J curve works. So I think this is a great lesson for entrepreneurs, and it was a really powerful reminder for me. So we make a decision and we go, oh my gosh, this is great. Here's the decision. I'm all in. And we expect that acceleration curve to just go up on a chart, just poof, up. Everything goes well from there. But the truth is you dip first to the bottom before you accelerate up. And if you know that that's coming, you can deal with it. But the reality is I'm at that point at the bottom of the J curve where it's starting to curve up, and I can start to see it as we start to launch the new website, launch the new technology, kind of all that stuff is coming into play, but I'm not there yet. So I have to wake up every day and remind myself that, hey, I'm one day closer to the top part of that curve than I was yesterday. I am one day closer, and I know that this is going to make the impact I want it to make, and I know it's going to pay off. I'm one day closer. And if you hear a little bit of a quiver in my voice, it's because I really do have to convince myself of that every single day. But it's a mindset game. And the other thing is I'm a big believer in taking action. So I can sit here and do my meditation, which I do for 10 minutes every day, and that's all great. But I then make a list of all the things I'm going to do to drive the business forward today. And then I go do at least 3 of them, no matter what. And whether that's connecting with someone that I met while I was keynoting that could turn into a potential client, or calling up an old client that I haven't talked to, or just, doing some research to make myself smarter in my business. So I balance the two. It's a little bit of mindset, but for me, it's all about getting into action so that I can feel the momentum and progress. Because if I don't feel it and I just think it, I will come to a dead stop.
Well, and I think what you're talking about as far as the J curve is something that, we've experienced. And I think probably just about every single one of our businesses. And I know Danae, she's probably, about to start laughing right now because she's been there, and I've had to be there to kind of help her understand, where we are in the business, that we just need to continue to push through. And so I think that's a great point, because many times as entrepreneurs, we get to that point of, how much more do I need to spend? How much more do I need to spend? And when am I going to start seeing that return? And it is kind of an unknown, so you are risking, but that's also one of the nice things about being an entrepreneur is you get to take those risks and be able to see the fruits of the reward and fruits of your labor as you continue that business and continue to move forward. And so for those of you who are listening, who are new entrepreneurs, or you've been in it a while and you just haven't really found that one business that's stuck, maybe you haven't invested enough in that business, or maybe you've invested so much, but you just didn't stick out long enough. And you need to make sure that you continue to push through and continue to invest, especially if it's something that you truly believe in and you're truly passionate about, and it really connects with your why.
I love it how you said that. And this is why I'm so focused right now on what are the little things that I can do to push my business forward every day while I'm kind of waiting out for those big things to happen, because you and I were talking about offline, or the three of us, is, I'm a little bit sitting with my hands, underneath, kind of keeping them from doing some of the things I want to do, because I need to have this stuff launched. And I know that, but that doesn't stop me from doing the little things that I can do to continue to move forward and win those small contracts and, sell a couple more things or whatever it is. But I think without that progress, what happens, particularly at the bottom of that curve, is the naysayers start to come in, people around you, inside your own head. And that's where you wake up and you're like, I shouldn't have done it. I'm spending too much money. This is going to put me under. It's never going to work. But that's all the head trash that starts to take over while you're trying to push it forward. And so I think if you can get into action, you can get rid of the naysaying inside your head. At least it has for me.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just recorded a daily tip that's going to be released in probably the next couple of weeks. Kind of similar to this, but I didn't have the practical thing that you just mentioned, where, I was basically saying you can't wait for everything to be perfect to go do something, because that time will never come. And when you're at the bottom of this J curve, I love the way, making a list of 10 things and doing at least 3 of them. You're right. Not only does it make you feel better because you're actually doing something while you're waiting for these things to come, but it also helps you work through what's going on in your head, that mental, struggle that you constantly have. Because, okay, when are we spent more money today? When are we going to see the return on that? But you're actually doing something that helps work through that as well. I think that's a good practical thing for us.
I like to think of it as refocusing, because I could sit there and focus on, all the naysaying in my head. And believe me, it happens to all of us.
Sure.
It totally happens to me. And I would be collapsed on the floor if I let it take over. But if I'm instead focused on that email to someone, or picking up the phone, or going to that event, or, whatever it is, my mind gets pushed over there. So I just, all that other stuff stays at bay. And, to your point about not worrying about perfection, we're all about like the 80% rule. Hey, if it's 80% good enough, we're going to go forward with it, because we spend so much time on that final 20% trying to get it right that we actually stop ourselves. And it's so funny that if you think about the time you spend on the initial 80% to get it far down the path versus the time you spend on that final 20% that half the time doesn't even make a difference, it's incredible. You spend all this time on the final 20% and then you end up waiting too long.
Mm-hmm. You missed the opportunity to seize whatever was there.
Yeah.
So I want you to kind of shift gears here a little bit and talk to us about what are some things that you do that helps you make these tough decisions?
Yeah, I do a couple things. So one, and I know this sounds, totally ridiculous, but I work out almost every morning at 5 a.m. Actually, I get up at 4 a.m. And which I know people listening are going, she's crazy. Don't listen to her anymore.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would say that's crazy.
I know. I don't know that I'm an early riser. I don't wake up all cheery and happy. I'm not that person. But, I have a limited amount of time in my day. So if I want to get my workout in, I'm getting up. But the reason it's so important to me is I find that if I get a little bit of exercise in the morning, that I'm much calmer for the rest of the day and I make better decisions. I'm not all riled up. So that's
getting
really
that blood flowing first thing in the morning.
Yeah. I think, we think Tim Ferriss has talked about it. A lot of people have talked about it in performance. I do think it really does make a difference. I notice the difference in the days. I do that. I do a little bit of meditation. I use this app called Insight Timer, which I love because I just browse through, find ones that I want to try. They're anything from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. So depending on how much time I have, I'll try new ones or go back to the ones that I know work. I also start the day by reading something that I find motivational, insightful from people who I admire. And here's the part where I think it might be a little bit different. That reading time is baked into my workday because I want to make sure it happens. And I find that if I just say, oh, that's the extra before I start work, it doesn't happen. So for me, that 20 minutes in the morning when I'm reading something, it's not only my time and it's work time, but it gets me in the right mindset. It's crazy. I don't know if you guys do that, but I just, I read Brene Brown a lot. I love her books. And Daring Greatly, if I just pick that up, doesn't even matter the page, read 20 minutes of it, I am a powerhouse all day long.
Well, and I think having something like that as a daily ritual, like you said, gets you into that headspace. And I think, one of the things that you have to make sure, though, is that, many times I've talked to entrepreneurs and they do something similar to that. But one thing that's missing in their life as an entrepreneur is action. And so you can sit there and read all you want. You can sit there and chant in front of a mirror and do affirmations, which is all good. They're all good things that can help you get into the headspace and the mind space of where you need to be. But until you take those steps of action, those things aren't going to help you at all unless you're taking action following that.
That is so true. And I would add a layer to that, which is I think it has to be the right action. You have to learn how to prioritize. I think there's a big difference between busy and action. So I could spend all day on social media, answering emails, looking stuff up, doing research. I could spend all day doing that and I could check off a lot of boxes. But the reality is those aren't the things that are going to drive my business forward. And you probably know the name of the book. And I think it's The One Thing. Is that the name of the book? By the William and Keller guy, the paint guy. I think it's called The One Thing. Here's what I loved about it. The question that he constantly asked himself and his team, which I've now applied, is, and I'm going to botch the full question, of course, but it's basically, what's the one thing you can do that by doing it makes all the other things easier or go away? And that is how I decide what to take action on. And then I go for it. And then I go down the list from there. But it's a great way to prioritize, because I totally agree with you that it's all about you get into the right mindset and then the gun goes off, right? And you got to start running. You can't just stand still. You have to go, but you got to do the right things.
And Tamara, I was going to actually just ask you if you had a book recommendation for our audience. So is The One Thing, would that be one that you would recommend, or do you have something else?
So I loved The One Thing. I thought it was great. Here's the thing with me. I read a ridiculous amount of books. So it's all about context and what I'm reading right now versus the one book I go back to. The other book that I absolutely love right now is Persuasion by Cialdini. And that's all about the pre-decisions people make to get to the sale, which I think is hands down just one of the most masterful books I've ever read.
And what was it called again?
Persuasion.
Persuasion. Yes, I actually have that. I'm looking at it on my bookshelf right now. I love Robert Cialdini's books. I thought that was the one you said. Another one that he wrote is called Influence, and I love that book
so good.
Too. Yes.
That's like the Bible of marketing right there.
If you're an entrepreneur and you have not read that book by Robert Cialdini, you need to.
That's one of the books that I read all of them on my iPad. And then that one was so good, I actually bought it so I could have it and thumb through it periodically, because it's one of those books you absolutely have to have. The other was, I was just scrolling through my books to kind of see. The other book that I'm really enjoying right now is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. I won't say the whole word, but it is, it's a really great mindset and how to put that mindset into action, to kind of what you were saying.
That's interesting. So let's shift gears a little bit again here and talk about some of the things that you've done with the money that you've made up to this point as an entrepreneur. So what is one of the most exciting places you've traveled to, or item that you've purchased with the money you've made as an entrepreneur?
Ooh, well, I am big into travel. I was so glad to see this question, because oh my gosh, I love travel. So I try to travel as much as I possibly can. And I took myself to Spain, which was glorious, to the southern part. And then the part that I loved the most is we took a boat over, actually from the Rock of Gibraltar, which I didn't even know actually existed, but it's actually a rock, over to Morocco, and hung out in Tangiers. And that, going through the bazaars and the shopping and the culture and the food, was probably one of the most amazing experiences ever. I absolutely loved it. And the place I'm trying to get to next is Croatia, because I've heard that place is incredible.
That was going to be my next question. What's your next place on that list right now? And so Croatia would be that next place. Do you have in your mind how far into the future you're going to be going to Croatia?
Actually, there's two places. The next 5 years, what I'm trying to plan more recently is actually Cuba, because I'd like to go before it totally changes over. I'm so excited to go to Cuba. I'm not sure how. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I'm getting there.
Well, I really do appreciate your time being on the podcast with us today. And Tamara, could you tell the listeners how they can reach out to you or start to follow you a little bit more and some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, well, we're all over social media at Launch Street for most all of it. I'm, of course, on LinkedIn, so I'd love to connect there. That's probably the best place to connect with me. And our website is gotolaunchstreet.com. So GOTO launchstreet.com.
GOTO launchstreet.com. And we'll also add that to our show notes, as well as your information on how they can connect with you on LinkedIn. And again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule and being with us today. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. It was a great interview. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.